We will call the meeting of what's today?
May 4th.
The meeting of May 4th called to order. The meeting of Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission has been taped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the government affairs channel on the Comcast cable system. Today's meeting has been cablecast live and will be repeated Saturday, May the 6th at 12 noon on Channel 14. A VHS copy is available for checkout from any library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker identification form located on the back table and give it to the secretary. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record.
Want me to do roll call? Jones?
Here.
Gora?
Here.
Natoli?
Here.
Johnson? Dickinson? Collin?
Here.
Nilo? Oh, sorry. Joseph Yee?
Here.
Waters?
Here.
Shelby?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Do we get the control room to cut down the volume a little bit on these mics? They're pretty loud.
I think that they won't be loud enough if they try to get them down much.
Okay.
I can hear Tony's breathing.
Yeah.
Still alive. It's a good thing.
Before we have our first item, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our newest member of our Cable Commission, and Mr. Joseph Yee from the city of Sacramento. I'd like to say welcome on behalf of the commission. If you'd like to have something to say, feel free.
Thank you, and I appreciate being here, the appointment to the commission. And I think that it's just lucky that I finally got cable TV about 4 months ago. So
Now you can watch yourself on TV.
that's probably something I don't want to do. But thank you.
Okay. First item.
Yes, could we first recognize that Commissioner Nilo is now in attendance, and our first item, well, for my record for attendance. And item 1 is Commission Council report back, interim executive director and consultant contract.
Mr. Chairman, members, I think you know from your memo, but Ginny Cahill is sitting in today for Harriet Steiner, who's attending the League of Cities City Attorneys Conference. So she's briefed and is here as our counsel today. I'll pretty much back out of this item. You received a memo from Harriet Steiner regarding your exec session last week. It was essentially her notes or memorandum, and I believe you may have some action steps you desire to take formally today on that.
Oh, yes, we have a memo, and in my discussion with Harriet, there's 2 issues. She's outlined them in her memo. And in her discussion with me, based on her long association with Rick, she felt that it would be better if the commission appointed a subcommittee to address this issue. So I've asked City Councilman David Jones if he would co-chair a subcommittee, and then if there are any other commission members that would like to volunteer to serve on this committee. It should be just one meeting.
Item 1 is Commission Council.
How about you, Nilo?
Since he was late. Okay.
Yeah, he's willing to do it.
And one from, how about one member from
I don't want you to go too far left.
one of the fixed cities?
Look at past me to you. Somebody over there.
Would you like to serve as the other one?
Yeah,
One meeting.
one meeting would be fine. Scheduling 3 people will be interesting.
Yeah.
We've had more than that to schedule for, so
Okay.
we'll work it out. Okay.
Mr. Chairperson, is that one committee for both of the
For both items, correct. Okay.
Yeah, just so I understand our task, is to take up the issue of the interim executive director and approaching the county or the city to discuss assisting us in the hiring of interim director, and also the consultant services contract item.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And one had to do with the day-to-day operations.
Yeah, and if there's no one here to speak on item number 1, then I would move the 2 recommendations.
What question?
Mm-hmm.
When will this come back to us? Next commission meeting?
The next meeting.
When we're good.
I don't know why we got Nilo involved in this operation.
Now you know the problem, right? Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Discussion.
I'd like to point out, Mr. Chairman, that also you are a member of the Fish Egg Cities as well, besides myself.
But when you're chair, you don't have to serve on every committee you can appoint.
What you call the power of delegation.
Roll call.
Jones.
Aye.
Gora.
Aye.
Natoli.
Aye.
Johnson. Dickinson. Collin.
Aye.
Nilo.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes.
Joseph Yee.
Aye.
Waters.
Aye.
Shelby.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item 2.
Item 2 is a report back from, a staff report back, and I'll clarify that at the last meeting, Councilmember Jones suggested and the commission directed that staff prepare or come back with a suggested process by which the commission could develop some objective evaluative criteria to assist the board in making funding decisions for its grantees. The staff report is a response to that, and in staff's way of trying to provide a process to output these criteria should you decide to go that way. I've tried, or staff tried at the end to bring some history and some philosophy to this. You've been in part, or not you specifically, some of you have been down this path somewhat before. With that, I turn it back over to you. This is staff's response to your request.
Questions?
Let me, as the originator of the request that the commission ratified and then gave direction to staff on, let me try to explain what the intent was, I think, of the commission. And it really was to try to see if we could not launch ourselves on a process that would involve input from the grantees and the broader community, but a process that would assist us in developing some sort of evaluative criteria, performance measurements that we can use both in evaluating the performance of the grantees, but also assist us in decision making when our budget comes up. The intent is not to suggest that we would have that put together by the time of this budget, which we are right on the heels of, but rather to position us in the future to have a more rational set of mechanisms available to this commission in making decisions as they relate to the grantees. And it really originates from having gone through one budget cycle and the discussion we had at our last meeting where we sort of announced the availability of funds, and at least my own personal feeling that we don't really have any sort of good set of measurements or evaluative criteria in making these decisions. And so I think the staff has laid out a process here, and what's critical for me is to make sure that the process is open to the grantees. There's been some communication, I believe, from the grantees sort of laying out some ideas that they would have for criteria. I think those definitely need to be considered and a part of whatever is ultimately brought back to this board should it decide to go forward and either use the staff or retain a consultant to help us with this, because we need to make sure this is done in a way that recognizes the unique benefits, if you will, and the sort of unique character of what the grantees do. But that's really the intent, is to sort of get us moving towards creating a process that results in that sort of outcome.
Isla?
I just want to address in terms of the staff report, in terms of that process, that I want to look at number 1 on the first page where it gives background, and then it says setting objectives, May 2000. I think probably the timeline is probably too tight in that. But anyway, I like the staff caution, and I think all of us should think a little bit about the staff caution about what's a reasonable objective, because I think the very last few words, what is its community programming mission, is something that a policy board absolutely is going to have to spend time developing. And I think that that's at the crux of what we're looking at. We have a responsibility as a board for 7 channels and for allocating time and resources to at least 6 of those currently, not the 7th. But it is something that, do we think and feel we're fulfilling whatever we define as the community mission of what these channels should be doing for the community. And I think that's a real basic thing we're going to have to struggle with. And so that's why I say I think the timelines are way too tight, because they're predicated on trying to get this done in the short term. But.
Or that you build into the process, the longer process, a request that the consultant or whoever does the work asks those questions and brings that in part back to you, where the consultant would say, it appears that your current mission is this, and feeds back to you what an external scan would say about your mission. And then in interviewing you and or others, it appears that there's a tendency or direction to want to move your mission to this, and then build the criteria around a redefined mission if you want to do that. In drafting it, I wasn't saying that you would decide the mission today, but that you would move the process forward today for the RFP, and making that caution a product of the process.
Okay, and so if you envision a consultant, what a consultant could do is scan the hours of time given to the programming on every one of the channels and say, this is how I analyze what your mission, what you must think your mission is, given what they see?
Yes, essentially based on what we see and what I think people say as well. This appears to be your mission. I'd say that your mission probably isn't very well defined. We haven't worked on this in quite a few years. So an external scan would look at all those factors and say, based on what we see, this appears to be your mission. Is this the one you want? Based on interviews of yourselves or the grantees or whoever else you would specify the consultant talk to, the consultant would come back and possibly say, gee, 85% of people we talk to say your mission seems appropriate, or some people say they'd like to see your mission modified by this and this, and it would give you some big picture reference points. And then the second part might be, given mission as defined, how would you evaluate? And here's some ways that you might do that. It's a tough nut.
And then also, do you have the resources, or are there the resources, or you're willing to commit to whatever you see your mission? I suppose is really the bottom line, and that could involve both financial as well as channel resources.
Robbie?
Thank you, James. The staff report, I agree with Isla that May 2000, this is too critical of the situation to try and, we're going to be deciding in the near future how much we're going to award for the upcoming year anyway. So I would agree with Isla that it's, I think we should look at this possibly. It should be the May 2000 for the first look. This report brought back a lot of memories to me from I used to be on the commission years ago when we struggled with these things, and the 6 bullets that you put in your report on the page 2, or the second, page 2. Now, I agree with 5 of the 6. The one I agree that you're right in your analyzation, but the number 5 one, I guess, board commitment is the most important factor to success. I think that's something I feel really shouldn't put in this equation, because if we're going to do it and we vote to do it, then the whole board should go along with it. So, but your last bullet is like the reminder to what we went through before, and there's quite honestly from the different cities and the county's perspective, there's more and more of the dollars they'd like to see come back to the local entities. So again, I don't have a problem looking at this. Can you tell me a ballpark on dollars and hours would be spent to have a consultant look at this and give us a balanced answer?
I would go in the 15 to 30 range, just off the cuff. It really comes down to how in-depth you want the data gathering to be, whether you go surveys or individual interviews, and those can be time-consuming.
Okay, well, that's a lot of dollars, and I don't know if it could be a person like yourself who's to take on more work and do this in-house. Well, I know that's not a very good way to approach this, but the point is, or at least a consultant that could cut through, rather than starting at point zero, that somebody like you that has the knowledge and knows 90% of the answers before the question's even asked. So, again, it's just something for consideration of this board, that we look at your expertise and over the years. And
I'd certainly like to be someone who was interviewed.
Be as an advisor to the consultant or something, where we could cut through and save some dollars that we'd be paying this consultant to try to do background that you could probably give to them in a day or two.
Certainly willing to help in any way.
That's fine. That's what I'm looking for.
Appreciate that. I think it probably needs an objective look, though. One of the problems we have with this, and I went back and listened to the tape, and in the suggestion you made, the direction last month, the word consultant was included in there. So that was why I picked up on it and went with it.
Yeah.
This is not a task that is a healthy one for staff to do, primarily because of the inherent conflict that your Cable Commission staff person is responsible for Metro 14. So as you know, there's a built-in bias there.
I can appreciate that, but again, I think that your knowledge and background and stuff could at least be, if I was a consultant, would certainly help me make some decisions. Thank you.
That.
Any other commissioners? There's two people in the audience wishing to speak on this item, Liz Rhodes and Ron Cooper.
Hi, everyone. Ron Cooper, Executive Director of Access Sacramento. Go Kings. Had to get that on the record. I have to just follow up with the points that Isla and Robbie have made, especially on those bullets that Mr. Espastos put at the end. This has been a 15-year journey, and actually in 92, 93, Access Sacramento in particular was, put to the task of being competitive with 8 other submissions, going through a process of how best to serve community use and public access television and radio in our community. There was recommendations made to sort that out and divvy that up, I think, among 5 or 6 different groups, and then finally a unanimous vote by the commission at the time to continue with the organization. Once the Cable Commission had an opportunity to see the complexities involved in providing a protected speech forum in our community by being open and available for anyone or any nonprofit or education or government entity to request and or produce anything is just an extraordinary challenge. It's a challenge that I actually enjoy because community-wide communication is very important to me personally. The organization has an extraordinary track record of success. So based on that success and out of a desire to further the discussion, since Councilman Jones put forward the idea of evaluation of some kind of objective criteria, Liz Rhodes of the Ed Consortium and I did discuss, and included in your packet is the email discussion that went on with Mr. Spasto, defining several different categories of audience criteria. And before you is also a blue one-page flyer to hopefully assist in a process that I think speaks to the intent of the motion from last month's meeting, and we'd love you to consider it as another option to consider that may not be as time-consuming, as resource-consuming, as expensive, and still provide some objectivity to the process. I see my time is running down here. Could I just have 2 more minutes?
Go ahead.
I appreciate that. Thank you. The key, I think, is the extensive process that all of the grantees, including Access Sacramento, is going on right now, producing an annual plan document. When I hear discussions about what are the performance criteria, I know Access Sacramento looks to those early documents in terms of hours and number of programming, in which consistently for more than 5 years we lead the nation in one of the smallest facilities for community and public access television anywhere in the nation. 2,400 square feet is what we have at the Coloma Center. We produce and facilitate more than a program per square foot per year. We've won numerous awards, national, regional. We self-evaluate ourselves. We're going through a process and have consistently for 5 years now had a long-range plan with a mission that clearly outlines what community and public access media means to our board of directors. We're going through the process now of renewing that 5-year plan, a long-range plan, with the help of the Nonprofit Resource Center and the Packard Foundation. We have the work of La Piana Associates, a nationally recognized firm looking at strategic thinking for nonprofit organizations. So all of this going on, I just would offer to you 2 points. That the process has set up nonprofit boards, in our case a 15-member nonprofit board, to help you in the day-to-day facilitation of this challenge to serve everyone and all organizations in Sacramento County. That board works very hard. We meet monthly. Each of you receives an extensive board packet, more than 30 pages every single month. Every single detail, every decision that we make you're briefed on a monthly basis. So based on that success and track record, based on our self-evaluation and mission-driven purpose, 2 questions I think I would suggest be considered. One is, how does the Commission annually evaluate each grantee's efforts to expend funds wisely and meet or exceed certain performance criteria? What happens if a grantee is not meeting the minimum requirements? In your document there is the email that Liz and I forwarded to Rich defining some criteria there. And that criteria, I think, without being redundant, to look through that, I think that criteria would challenge each grantee to provide data to you on an annual basis for your review. What would happen if you decide that one of the grantees is not performing? Well, I think this is then the role of a consultant. I can't imagine an organization not being receptive to having a consultant come in and help us with our challenges. I can only speak for Access, but we would welcome that. The second question is the appropriate annual funding for the grantees. It has been mentioned in this chamber many times to define a percentage based on the current way in which the money is dispersed. Once that percentage is set for each of the grantees, then that percentage, if the revenue from cable-related activities, fees goes up, well, that percentage would then go up. If that goes down, then that percentage would go down, and then the process, as Rich put together last month, in terms of that decade-long, well, every single year we go through a question of how much should each grantee have, should there be an increase, should there not be, and so forth, would be addressed. So just in conclusion, these are exciting times. The success story, I was just in the NATOA conference where Rich was there as well presenting. The success story in Sacramento County around the state is extraordinary. The other communities look to us with envy, wanting to know. The city of Los Angeles is in turmoil. And the principal reason is that they, in that crisis environment, cannot serve minority audiences. And the people in the room where I was advocating for public access, and 2 counterparts are sitting there from the cable industry, the only people that really spoke up in that room were people of color. And that's really what's at issue here, is how do you serve minority audiences in a commercial atmosphere? And the reality is that you don't. And that this jewel of a process that we have in Sacramento is something to be protected, and there are many thousands of folks who agree with how we've done it and want to continue it. We'll be happy to tweak it, happy to work with you in any way. So, any questions?
I just have one. As we add a new franchise, and there was an interest in the community for increasing the number of community programs available, what process is available to do that currently?
Increasing the production of programming?
Correct.
The main problem that we have now, Commissioner Shelby, is it's a county-wide mandate through principally one facility. The ED Consortium is a consortium of all campuses, college, high school. We are at Paloma Center. So one of the primary goals that our Board of Directors has identified and we're looking at is how can there be additional sites located for some level of training and production in the various emerging communities, in areas of the city of Sacramento and the county of Sacramento that aren't currently being served. At last month's meeting, I did pass out a proposal in terms of how this is a unique window in time with Comcast cable, new services being provided by Western Integrated Networks, a wonderful opportunity for us to make proposals to those organizations to renew the network capability and to combine with them in providing production outlets directly within a 10-mile radius of wherever you live. And that would be critical. On our own, it's extremely difficult with the resources dedicated to serve everybody from one location. But to expand those locations, to offer training closer to home would be the key.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Liz Rose?
Hi, I'm Liz Rhodes, Executive Director of the Educational Cable Consortium. Just a couple of real quick points. I think Ron covered a lot of things. The Ed Consortium is very appreciative, especially Councilmember Jones, for your intent to keep us in the loop of that. Supervisor Collins, you indicated the mission. Education has had a mission for 15 years, and I think the most important thing to us, where we welcome any kind of criteria, any kind of input that you want, that you want to lay out, and we welcome the opportunity to be a part of that. We just like it to be clear that for 15 years we've been developing one that's very much ingrained into this community, into the schools, and the schools especially have put a tremendous amount of resources because this is a vital part of their program. So just for the record, and it's something you know anyway. But it is important to us to continue to be a part of this because this is an ongoing commitment from the educational community. I think we've done a good job, and I think you've recognized that. So as we go through this process, we do appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it. We'd like to continue with that, and then whatever that means in terms of the involvement of our membership and at what level that means. We want to make sure that the time is used wisely and that what we come up with is something that enhances what we have been doing for the past 15 years. So with that, I thank you.
Any questions? Well, one thing is apparent, we don't want to do anything, I guess, this fiscal year. And so maybe at the end of this fiscal process, we could look at a process to move a consultant forward to look at this issue. And I think it's good, too, to look at opportunities. There may be some other people in our community that may want to be included, to be added to the process that we currently have, and there ought to be a way to be able to do that. Commissioner Jones?
I want to thank both Liz and Ron for their comments today and for the communications they've sent to me by email on this subject. I think the points they make are very well taken, and their thoughtfulness in proposing criteria, I think, is very helpful, and I would certainly want to ensure that we include them and the broader grantee community and actually the entire public community in this process of trying to determine, as I think Isla and Robbie said, what the mission is, but as well hopefully putting some flesh on the bones of how we go about evaluating performance and making decisions about how we allocate our scarce resources. I agree that I don't think it is wise or desirable or even attainable for us to try to accomplish this before our next budget. I think there's been a little confusion around the staff report where it says, number 1, setting objectives May 2000. I think that refers to the notion of objectives that would be set forth in the RFP that would define the mission for the consultant, as opposed to setting forth the actual performance objectives or evaluative criteria. I think the real intent of this staff recommendation is that the end goal of the process would be by February of 2001.
I understood that. It's just that I didn't know this is already our May meeting, and so I was trying to figure
so it
out
is.
how you would even do the, how you would even, if we bring that RFP back as to what we think we want the consultant to look at, we'd be into June 2000, and I just didn't know whether you wanted to take it up at that time.
That's a very good point. I guess my suggestion would be that we direct the the staff to move forward and come back to us with an RFP and use that as the vehicle to try to further articulate what the precise objective or mission is going to be of the consultant. And we'd have a chance then as a commission to sort of take up that language at that time. I think it's very clear that we want this to be an open process that involves the grantees. I think the notion of the consultant engaging in interviews, not only of us as commissioners, because I think the point that a number of commissioners have made about making sure the commissioners are engaged in this, because this is ultimately going to only work if we buy into whatever these measurements are, but also ensuring that we have a process that includes the grantees and the broader public as well. That ought to be an element of the RFP. But I guess I would suggest that we direct the staff to come back to us with a proposed RFP for this process in June, and I would make a motion at this time to that effect, just to allow the commission to discuss that specific idea.
Is there a second?
I will second it.
The motion is second that we direct staff to bring back a process for a consultant to look at this issue for the fiscal year 2001, 2002.
If I can be a little more, it would be to bring back an actual proposed RFP.
That's what I thought you meant. That would encompass some ideas about what we want the consultant to look at.
That's correct.
And then we could add at that time before we would authorize the release of it.
Okay.
That's correct.
Does everyone understand the motion? Roll call.
Jones.
Aye.
Gora. Natoli.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Dickinson. Collin.
Yes.
Nilo. Joseph Yee.
Aye.
Waters.
Aye.
Shelby.
Aye. Item 3.
Mr. Chairman, members, this is a staff recommendation for you to approve a second purchase order following the RFP that we issued earlier this year. Background-wise, in the current budget, we put in approximately $250,000 for what we thought the upgrade would cost to do 2 phases of the overall plan. And you have a summary here. You got the whole plan in your December packet. So those 2 phases included getting a video digital server installed here and linking us with the help of Comcast from the City Hall to here so that all the data, video data, it isn't tape anymore, it's video, is being stored here. And there's one more piece I want to show you that we got as part of this process.
Is that going to work if you have to hook it up? Rich knows all about viruses too, so.
We're past that.
Good.
Seeing the screen a website that's up and running now that hasn't been demonstrated in too many places just yet, but we'll see what this does for you. This is an example of what's available now on the internet, and this is an example of a let me see if we got this tracking here.
Worldwide broadcast.
Yeah. For the last week or so, and I'll revert back when this catches up. For the last week or so, we've been testing the web feed, which is phase 5 of our plan to distribute to mirror Metro 14 on the web. The example I've got in front of you, and it's been running now for 41 minutes and 47 seconds, and I'm not sure why it's choking as it is. But the example I wanted to point out is that the box we bought is the equivalent of a very big pipe. This is a dam, and it can feed the video signal out very, very big if it wants to. But most of our clients, most of the world has access via dial-up, which is what this laptop is doing right now. It's the equivalent that at home, the water at home comes from the dam, but if you've got a little tiny pipe that's partially clogged, the flow of water can't get through. Where I'm going with is that we have the capability, but I don't think that the broadband, which is what we're waiting for and what we've been striving for, has been deployed at a high enough level in our community. And we know that Pat Bell is moving with Project Pronto. Wynn has its plan and has started construction. We'll see what Comcast/AT&T does. My point is that we're going to bring this up as a service, but initially within the city and within the cities and counties structure, meaning I don't think we want to give the web address out to everybody just yet, because we're going to end up on the customer service side of saying, how come I don't get this feed? Obviously, this is stalled out now. That's going to happen a lot, and the calls are going to come to us. So I want to clean up the process, watch for broadband to be deployed. We have it within the cities and the county, and so we'll begin marketing this to eliminate the squawk boxes in all your rooms and buildings and give you an opportunity for, on a limited basis to access via the web. This is a web feed. This is not a video feed. This is what's out there. The purpose of the staff recommendation today to spend the other $50,000 is to move to the next phase of our plan, actually, which is phase 3, which is to put the same digital server and software and the same ability to feed to the web in the mobile van. Originally, I thought we'd be 3 years to do this because I figured the original bids that we got and the 3 of you approved came in about $100,000 lower than we thought. So I've got money in the budget. I should say we've got money in the budget. The implementation of the changes for the purchase order that we authorized the end of October were tough. I said in my staff report it was relatively trouble-free, but I've got to give a lot of credit to Donna and Bill. They had some long nights and some long weekends here, but it's up, it's running, it's clean. If you've noticed on your regular Metro 14 channel on Comcast, the picture's better, the quality of the picture is better, it's crisper, the graphics are better. All those things were a result of that major product. What we want to do now is give equal treatment to those entities that we cablecast from the van. So all of the FIGs, Citrus, and all the rest, and SMUD and RT, where we roll the van, we want to put the same equipment in that ahead of schedule. So what you have before you is a recommendation from staff to approve $50,000 out of the current budget. This is not a budget augmentation. It still leaves about $110,000 in the budget for additional fixed assets, which won't go this year. We'll deal with that in the budget. And advise to you that the vendor that we recommended has met and delivered and performed. We held back to be sure that we got the services and assistance that we wanted, and we feel that they've met that, and that we are moving along the plan, which continues so far to be ahead of schedule and ahead of budget, I guess, is the bottom line. So it's recommended that you authorize the executive director to execute the purchase order attached at the last page of this item. And I don't know why it's not running.
Questions?
Good work.
Just exciting. Exciting.
So moved.
Second?
It's moved and second that we adopt a resolution authorizing the executive director to execute a purchase order to Digital System Technology in the amount of $51,000. Question?
Rich,
Adopt a resolution authorizing the executive director to execute a purchase order to Digital System.
There it goes.
If you would bring it back up, or you should see it on your monitors, on your dais monitors. So I re-kicked it and recognized that the internet feed is going to lapse by some number of seconds to get out. Those little bits have gone all over the world and come back. So what you're seeing on your monitor is the piece of it. When you look at the bottom of the screen, it says playing. Sometimes it says buffering. That's waiting for the clog to unclog as we get broadband.
It won't clog.
It won't clog.
Yeah.
It won't clog. Broadband at this is a typical poor case home dial-up at 28,800. Broadband is going to be, depending on who's providing it, 10 million. That's the proposal by Win. At 300,000, this is 28,000. At 300,000, the technology allows us to go full screen, full motion video. No jerking, no hesitation. So as broadband deploys, the internet door opens. You'll see now it says buffering. That's the clog. Anyhow, it's up and running, and our big client right now, one of our big clients, is the county, is airports. They've been clamoring for access to your meetings, especially the board meetings. So,
Yes, they have.
sorry, I interrupted you, but this is fun stuff, Mr. Waters.
Just trying to figure out what we're going to do to them.
Yeah, that's right.
You got to stay at arm's length.
Yeah, that's right. If I don't have cable out there.
okay. So that was a good demonstration and a not so good demonstration. That's fine, but that's
purposefully.
But my point was that I just want to commend you and the staff because you kind of rounded it off, but I did the figures here, and I get quite upset when these numbers come in. The next bid was $85,000 higher, and the next bid was $126,000 higher, and here we have And I know the low bids lots of times are not reliable, but we're hearing you say that they've been reliable, and so, again, I would support this from the fact that there's just no rhyme or reason that somebody can come in $126,000 for the same product. So, and the point that you make in the second page about equaling all the other cities and SMUD and the other entities to be able to have the quality and have the ability that we have here in the chamber and that we have at City Hall. So I just think that it's a real plus. And thank you.
I'd say that for the smaller cities, we may get to having them webcast before we get them cablecast, looking at how the processes are working. So Citrus and Galt and Folsom and Elk Grove may be up on the web before we get them up on the channel, just because of the costs and the infrastructure being deployed. Thank you, Mr.
Is there any consideration been given to a new name for FIG? Or not Elk Grove's aboard?
Yes,
Big E.
Big E.
What is it, Mr. Natoli?
What's that?
What is the recommendation? I thought you said yes, the recommendation for a new name. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I
I'm
didn't
sorry,
say yes.
Don. I thought it was you saying it.
Fish egg.
Fish egg? No, I know what it means. Yeah.
Elk Grove and Galt.
Yeah. There'd be a cartoon and a bee on that one. Thank you.
How long did you guys work on that? All the staff time.
Yes. But you could just wanted to thank the Cable Commission staff. I know the new video monitors. The one that I'm sitting at here is one Ramiro Johnson during the board meetings usually sits or has for the past several months, and this monitor was one that kept going with a more of a pattern.
We kicked it, though. We learned to kick it.
We learned where to kick the monitor and to get to go. But anyway, these monitors seem to be performing well, so I just want the new equipment and they have much better video quality.
They're much lighter. Very nice.
Yes, and
Fans.
cooler.
Roll call.
Thank you. Roll call. Jones?
Yes.
Gora?
Aye.
Natoli?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Dickinson? Collins?
Yes.
Nilo?
Yes.
Joseph Yee?
Aye.
Waters?
Aye.
Shelby?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item 4.
Grantee status reports?
Okay, we have two
Yes.
sign-ups, Liz Rhodes and Ron Cooper.
Again, Liz Rhodes, Sacramento Educational Cable Consortium. Just a couple of things today. First, I put a copy of our May program guide in front of you. We're excited. We're wrapping up another school year with our classes. The summer classes are on if you want to take a quick look. It's one of the things that we think we finally got narrowed down and put in place is how to do these classes. Our enrollments this year are quite high, and we'll be coming back to you with a full report on that in June. So that means that it's just growing phenomenally. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about today, and it's interesting that this is National Turn Off Your TV Week. So it's a really bizarre time to talk to you about one of the big pushes that we've been doing with our schools this year, and that is the student productions. As I said, we think we've got the classes kind of under our belt. We know what we're doing. We're moving ahead with those. But what we find is that we need to do a lot more work with our students. One of the biggest things in education we feel, and why it's interesting that it's Turn Off Your TV Week, is it's not a matter of turning off your TV. It's a matter of understanding what the television is all about and what the video is all about. And to have a community of students who are media literate is extremely important. So one of the things that we have done, and that we do every year, is we have a student educational video competition where students from all over the county enter videos in our little competition with the idea that there has to be an educational message behind that. This year we had over 20 schools participate, and probably the most number of entries that we've had. I've put on your table just a copy of our annual award night program, which we held last week. It was wonderful. We had about 300 parents, students, and teachers attend over at KVIE, filled the place. It was a lot of fun, a lot of fun. And inside you'll notice there's a little flyer for, we're going to be airing the winners of that student competition. But kind of back to what I was talking about with understanding the students understanding video and how that's all put together, and the work that we've been doing with them. I've got a short clip of some of the video entries that I want you to take a look at, and we showed some of these at our awards night last week, so take a minute and look at those. Let's roll that tape. So,
really, for video and for film, the saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words really applies. You can get so much from an image. But then when you have 30 of those images coming at you every second, the information load increases so much. You can really portray your ideas, your thoughts. You can give people, you know, a whole range of emotions, from laughing to crying to...
By being in a media class like this, our kids are maybe getting a better sense of what's real and what's not, and that a lot of things they see are staged, and that how they create their media project and how they interact with the people in their group is hopefully going to build character and responsibility.
You've seen tape on the camera, and then you turn it into, you know, a finished project, and it looks really good. And, you know, it gives you something that you're kind of proud of, and you could reach people through it.
The hardest part of making the video was memorizing the lines, but my lines were kind of easy, so... You know, that makes me so happy. Ching! I'd rather be a director, like trying to boss people around.
to see all of them. Just look at that insert. It'll tell you, well, as many as we have the rights to air, we are airing on our channels. And this is something that we want to do much, much more of. As the teacher said in that clip, for the students to begin to understand what's real and what's not real, and understand how TV affects them is so important. And there is no better way than the opportunity that this community has provided them with video production capabilities, and then also the wonderful ability for these kids to be able to see their productions on television at home with their parents and their families and their neighbors and their relatives. It's just been quite powerful for them. And it's something that we're extremely excited about. Most of our efforts are going to go into that next year, and we'll be talking more to you about that in June.
Question? Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Liz, on the rights to air, do the students maintain the copyright, or does the school, or who is able to assign the rights for SEC or anybody else to air the videos that are made in the public arena, i.e. the schools and so forth? Who maintains the...
That varies with the policy set by the school. Smctc has a form when they enter the competition that says that we have the right to air it. We do not own the copyright to any of that. Our only concern, and we're real careful with this, because part of the whole learning process is dealing with copyright issues, is if there's music and things like that in there that we're not really sure they have the rights for, those we hold back. We'll share them and, at a public meeting, much as we did at KVIE, but we will not put them on cable. And that's just because of our own policies. But it really is up to the school. And as you know, there's lots of issues with student images and what happens with them.
Exactly.
But yeah, we have little sign-off on everything that we air.
By the students themselves, or their parents also sign off on this release?
The parents have to sign off if they're minors on that
And
release.
all these were depicted appear to be under 18.
Yeah.
Of them.
Well, except the teacher.
Well, of course, yeah.
Just one question. I have one question. How many schools are involved?
In the entries that we had on this, we had over 20 schools that provided entries for us. We're getting more and more students and schools involved with video production, but it's it's that age-old problem of having equipment out there at the school sites. Now, all of our facilities And we have, over the years, we've done joint venture facilities at different schools where we don't have a studio at any one place. Those are all open, absolutely free to anybody, any educational, group that wants to come in and use them at no charge. But, it doesn't work for all of them because it requires transportation.
Yeah, because one of the concerns about digital divide is making sure that we don't leave any of the urban core schools out, and that's my concern when I look at this. I don't see a lot of the schools in the real urban core of Sacramento, and how do we reach out to have those included? If we don't have money, maybe that's some of the allocation that we can use in terms of getting new cable money, is to making sure that those schools are included in the process.
You're right. And without jumping the gun too much, one of the proposals that we come back with to you next month in ours deals very specifically, with that, especially since the cost of the equipment has come down so dramatically over the last several years. And to tell you, that to us this is very exciting that we have over 20 schools participating. The first year we did it, we had 4 schools. So it's better, but it could be a lot better.
It would be nice to see some schools in like Del Paso and other underserved communities represented.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I had a conversation day before yesterday with Dr. Carl Mack of Del Paso because we worked very closely with him. As a matter of fact, one of the programs that was honored was produced by Del Paso Heights. And it's something that he is very, very interested and has been for a long time, and we've done a lot of production with him. But it needs to production equipment needs to get into those schools.
Okay, we'll have a follow-up discussion. I'd like to talk to you about that.
All right, I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Ron Cooper?
Ron Cooper, Executive Director of Access Sacramento. Go Kings. Get it in twice.
Don't jinx them.
Third time's the charm. I won't say it again. Just a brief update in some current activities, and I'd emphasize again the being there that night for the SEVE Awards was really the payoff for all of this. To see young faces, as a teacher myself, I don't think there is a more important topic for young people today than understanding the communications technology that inundates their lives. And that media literacy is absolutely critical and relates to all other phases of their life, both emotional and intellectual. So to see those young faces being so productive, to see those honors bestowed is a true important role that the Ed Consortium plays in our community. Just to update you, the Census 2000, the local Complete Count Committee, continues to work with us in producing the 10 different language explanations of what the census is doing currently with enumerators. The deadline for mailing your census form has passed, and now if you're a household that did not send one in, an enumerator will come to your door. And the concern in many other than English-speaking communities is a real misunderstanding of what the census process is and where does the information go. And so generally speaking, there is a lower count in those portions of the community that actually should be counted, certainly, because the services that are dependent upon that information. So we're working together with that committee, but it also poses the challenge, and let me just cite that for you, because if you're not in the trenches, sometimes you miss it. The Census Count Committee, working with the federal census, came up with a script, about a 7-minute script in English. And then we had to go through the process of identifying the 10 languages. Now, there are many, many, many more than 10 languages spoken in our community. Schools teach over 60. So that was a struggle. Which 10 languages? Then the issue was translating the English. Well, some people are good in speaking a language, but they're not necessarily good in translating. So finding a translator. Then finding a person to speak what was translated, feel comfortable in front of a camera. So that has been a real exercise in what it means to really implement diversity. So it's been a learning curve for all of us, but once those 10 videos are produced, which should be completed in the next week to 2 weeks, and then run through June, Be happy to share them with Metro 14, Ed Consortium, KDIE, and anyone else who would like to run them. The County Office of Education is actually sending home with school kids the schedule that these various languages will be running on our channel, so that then parents can watch and learn, who is this stranger coming up to my door and what does he or she want. The other point that I wanted to bring to your attention was this little yellow sheet there. At the last board meeting, the Access Sacramento Board has now assumed the role of partner with the Sacramento Festival of Cinema in its 5th year. We are the 501c3 fiscal agent now for the Festival of Cinema. It's shaping up to be an extraordinary 4 days, end of October. Wednesday night will be an IMAX grand opening for a new animated feature that's coming out. Thursday night will be a tribute to former Mayor Cerna. Friday, once again for the 4th year, will be the Tower of Youth Day, inviting 900 teenagers to come and be involved. On Saturday, and Friday and Saturday actually, is when our conference for the Alliance of Community Media Western Region will be out at the Doubletree and at the Crest, with workshops on the question of digital production, inviting all ages to participate, certainly the young, but I am really, really concerned, folks, about all us baby boomers. We're the ones that are going to be around a long time, and understanding technology is critical. So those workshops will be held at the Doubletree and at the Crest. Saturday night will be the Western Access Video Excellence Awards, 6 Western states. We've gotten a lot of indication for support. And then on Sunday, that's what this document is, a new effort called A Place Called Sacramento, to encourage the production of at least 10 10-minute digital video productions using dramatic scripts. So not a travel log, not a documentary, not the 14th time you've seen a tour of Sutter's Fort, as nice as Sutter's Fort is, but actually glimpses of life here in Sacramento, the people, the interactions. Some of them might be outrageous, some might be very mundane, but we're encouraging and going to groups like ITBA, the Northern California Writers Association, and other organizations who look to talent in our community. The dilemma, if you're involved in video and film production in Sacramento, is the chicken and the egg. Why doesn't Hollywood come and pay us the big bucks? Why do they bring their own crews in? Why don't we have that money? Well, the question is one of creative talent and using that talent and demonstrating that talent. So this is hopefully a way that will demonstrate that. We'll produce 10 videos about what it means to live in Sacramento. Many of the .com distribution companies looking for short media are interested, and this then kicks off what we refer to as the Access Digital Film School, which incorporates exactly what Rich was talking about, broadband delivery, cable-like delivery of video products internationally, so that whatever goes on here in Sacramento, if you're touring in Thailand, you can go on the internet and tune in. You can tune in Metro 14. You can also tune in and see these glimpses of life in Sacramento County. This is what I mean by we are really honored in terms of the investment that this organization, the Commission, has made over the years in creating a jewel that the entire world looks at with envy. So, thank you.
Thank you. Item 5.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, if I may, Ron, I wanted to thank you for the work you've done and Access has done on the census, and just follow up on one sort of language or culture-related issue. And I'm just curious, do the Hmong and the Mien community have any programming currently on Access Sacramento?
Yes, the Hmong have a radio program. We're working with the Mien. There's also a Vietnamese program on radio, and that group is now taking the studio class to do a regular studio production. About 20% of our television programming is languages other than English.
Great. I knew the Hmong and Mien community had a radio station, but you referred to they're taking a class. Did that reference just include the Vietnamese group or
There's
Hmong
a
and
Vietnamese
Mien
program and a Hmong program.
That's moving towards some sort of a cable TV sort
Well,
of
they're
program?
currently on community radio.
Okay.
So you can hear them on 91.5
Right.
FM. And with one group is moving to do a television production of that. So,
Okay. The only reason I raise it is a number of leaders in the Hmong and Mien community have approached me about coming up with strategies to try to preserve some of their some elements of their culture that they're concerned about losing, quite frankly. And what we've been doing at the city is trying to do a better job of programming for the Hmong and Mien community in our Parks and Recreation Department, not only making those facilities available, but actually allowing them to program activity directed to their community. And it just strikes me that from the standpoint of preservation of culture and transmission of culture to subsequent generations, video and cable TV might be an important way to accomplish that.
that really has been our experience. Again, all these are lessons. No one wrote the book on how we actually implement diversity community-wide. The Hmong in particular, because as I've come to understand, Hmong came to the United States in '73 at the end of the Vietnam War, almost en masse. If they stayed in Vietnam, they were going to be killed. They were our strongest ally. And so the culture is very new to this country. And it's a first generation, second generation issue, very purely. So we've seen, I remember the first, when we first opened up, it was in Fresno, now it's here in Sacramento, but the Hmong New Year. We would have local folks come in, take our camera to Fresno to document the Hmong New Year, which filled the Fresno amphitheater. It was like 15,000 people. And they'd bring that back to run in the community. Well, now that's easier to do because it's here in Sacramento instead of Fresno. So, no, it is, your eyes are opened in terms of the language and the diversity, and also the challenges of speaking and working together, especially with technology. So,
great. I just welcome the chance to chat with you a little more about that offline. And let me also thank Liz for her presentation. I think the Educational Cable Consortium is doing fantastic work, and the video you showed is just another demonstration of that. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Item 5 is Winston Asagawa.
Winston Ashizawa.
Oh, yeah, Comcast was first. I'm sorry. Okay. Barry Egan.
No, that would be Marion Bell
I'm
Holmes.
sorry, Mary. Marion Bell Holmes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'll only take about 10 seconds of your time. We just wanted to give you a preliminary report on what we will be presenting to you in July as part of our annual affirmative action report. This year we will be presenting our annual report as we normally do, and also at the request of this body, we will also include a report on our minority, women, and small vendor usage here in the Sacramento area. In preparation for that report, we have begun a fairly extensive process of surveying our current vendors, and there are quite a few, asking them to self-identify in terms of their whether or not they're a small business, minority owner, or et cetera. We will include that information as well as, more importantly, our efforts to really address our internal processes, our reporting processes, and also our external outreach programs. And we clearly know that we will have to work on improving all of that processes as we move forward. So just wanted to give you a little update as to what we're planning, and we'll get that information out to Rich and to Ken Fleming, who was the Affirmative Action Officer for the City of Sacramento, and plenty of time for his review prior to the July meeting. Okay?
Now, Mr. Winston Asagawa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If I mess your name up, forgive me. Even though I've
We go
known you a
back
long
so far,
time.
James, it won't matter. Good afternoon. I'm Winston Ashizawa. I'm happy to introduce myself as the new Regional Vice President and General Manager for Western Integrated Networks here in Sacramento. I'd like to begin by giving a brief background for those of you who don't know me as well as perhaps James and Isla and others. I first started my career in Sacramento in 1971 as a county employee, working in environmental services and then in environmental planning. And worked in the county planning department and left about 1977 for SMUD, and was happy to serve the county in the capacity of a planning commissioner on both project and policy commission, where I worked with James, and also on the county toxics task force, on the ad hoc charter commission. So there have been a number of areas where I've tried to help in the community role. I've been on the board of the Asian Community Center for many, many years, almost 30 years now, and we operate the Asian Community Nursing Home on Rush River Drive in the South area. At SMUD, I've had a varied career in terms of energy efficiency, and then became the Chief Information Officer in 1996. The efforts in energy efficiency have been, as SMUD is, very committed towards our community base and in trying to do things in a public-private partnership when at all possible. Our loan program, we went into our financing program and we checked with lenders to make sure we weren't stepping on toes, and they said, no, we don't really do a lot in that particular unsecured market. Please go ahead, do what you want. And we have a very successful financing program that helped a lot of our contractors in the community doing air conditioning systems, lighting systems, shade screens through the tough economic years of the 80s and 90s. We have the Shade Tree program that I'm particularly proud with, where we partner with the community in the Tree Foundation, and other examples. At SMUD, as the Chief Information Officer, I had telecommunications, which was fiber, two-way radio, and telephone system, as well as the traditional information technology aspects reporting to me. And I was very happy at SMUD, and this opportunity came along where Wynn approached me, and this was, I thought, an opportunity, not because of the technology aspects, although that's all got a lot of nice things about it, but for what it can do for the community in terms of service to all classes of our residents, whether they're renters or owners, whether they're college educated or not, whether they're small business or big business, to address the digital divide, to address access to better programming choices. I think we have an existing competitor that offers good programming, but choices. And I think competition brings better things to the community. In terms of the efforts we've done so far, as I sense a little interest here in what we're asking franchisees to do in terms of local sourcing and those kinds of things, we haven't had a chance to do much. I've just been working since the 17th of April. We've acquired a lease for some property at 1425 River Park to be a little closer to the center of town. We have a construction office on Northgate Boulevard where we're going to be focusing our efforts in Del Paso and Natomas to offer our initial services to a broad section of our community economic interests. In terms of what few procurements we've been able to do in supporting these two offices, I retained a women-owned firm to help us with our design planning for our office requirements for short-term and long-term. We've retained all either minority or women-owned firms to do the computer networking and telephone support since I've started. We have a corporate standard for Dell computers, and so we'll be procuring our computers through Dell. But we don't need necessarily Dell monitors or Dell-provided printers. We can buy those locally, and we will buy those locally from local vendors, and to the extent that they can be given an opportunity, the women minority vendors will be given as much opportunity as I can. We've secured addresses and locations for all the minority and traditional chambers, and we'll be getting on board with the chambers in terms of our networking to make sure that they understand that WIN is here to provide business opportunities to the community. We're going to be staffing up as much as we can with community people, doing training to add and build skills and create career opportunities. And it's my intention to have a very strong local team that's committed to this community. And I think you're going to start seeing some exciting opportunities. We're just at the very early stages, so there's not much in the way of hires. I'm working out of my home at the moment until we can get into the office, but we'll be working very aggressively that in terms of recruitment. In fact, I'll be meeting with Cooperative Personnel Services tomorrow morning, and they're traditionally a public sector kind of employment service organization. And I'm approaching them to brainstorm and see how we can help each other in the short term while I don't have an HR team, so that they can learn what the private sector organization does in terms of high-tech recruitment and training and retention, and that can help all the organizations that they serve, be they at the state or local government or special district, and help me provide that kind of open access recruitment that we'll be doing in job fairs and screen of applications and postings and those kinds of things. So that's just a little touch of what's going on, and we'll be providing you with further updates as we get more to report. Now, Barry Egan, who's very much busy with the construction activities, I think he can give you a brief update.
Before you leave, I'd just like to come back up. I would like to commend Wynn for such a fine appointment. Winston goes a long back in this community, a long way back. He's done some outstanding things. He's been committed to diversity. I've served with him on the Planning Commission and the City-County Consolidation Study, and worked with him as a colleague at SMUD. And so good luck to you in your new assignment, and I know you'll do well.
Thank you, Gene.
Great.
Barry?
Barry Egan, Project Director for Western Integrated Networks. If you recall, at last month's meeting, I had reported to you on the that we're busy in basically the planning, mapping, and engineering stage of the project right now, and we're still at that stage, and we'll be at that stage probably till mid summer or end of July, when we're planning we can actually start some aerial construction and continue with some underground construction. Right now, we're still continuing working with developers on all the joint trench projects in the Folsom, Elk Grove, Natomas areas. Seem to be the big growth areas for new housing. And we're on board at SMUD as part of the Joint Trench Committee, and our people are getting conduit in the ground when they're opening those trenches. That's a benefit to us. Obviously, we don't have to come back in later and do our underground construction work on those projects. And at last month's meeting, I reported that we were going to do a demonstration of our directional bore technique with the city and county engineering and public works staff. We did complete that little project up in the Natomas area, and it seemed to go well. We didn't have any problems. The biggest thing with that project was to determine with the engineering and public works departments of how they will start to develop some standards for the directional bore work in a residential type of application. So last week we met with Dave Cullivan and Dave Frankie of the county, and and some of their staff members, and they're going to go back and start working on this, the standards and the specifications for the bore, and then we're going to meet again. We hope to get some permits in the process within the next 30 days to continue with the underground work.
Robert, in our conversation earlier, you mentioned before I came in that you'd videotape this trenching, boring.
Right.
Would it be possible to show a 2 or 3 minute segment at our next cable commission?
Yeah, we should be able to. Dave Frankie of the county, he had one of his, I guess they have a video department. They came out and did that.
Yep.
Last week when I talked to him, he didn't have it edited and ready.
But I mean by next month, and then it might be valuable. I know it'd be valuable because I was unable to make that at the last minute. But to me and to all the people in the audience that are watching this, to see how this system that works so well.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think that was our intent. So.
Okay.
That's all I really had. Are there any questions?
I'm just going to, this is kind of a facetious remark, but in the downtown area, the same streets are opened up and closed up and opened up and closed up. And can anybody take advantage of that while they've got all those openings? I cannot tell you how many times they've opened up 7th and all
Jay
around
Street.
here, and Jay, well, you name the street. It's a great game every day to figure out how to get to work. What's going to be dug up this morning?
You know, we have talked about that, if somehow somebody coordinating that, and that's probably through the permit process. But Williams Communications is doing a lot of work. They took the effort to contact us, and they contacted our engineering department in Denver, and we are going in jointly with Williams on some of their projects they're doing downtown. And they're doing a bore next month in June of the Sacramento River over to West Sac. We are part of that project too. They're going to put in some additional conduits for us on that. And right now, I've hired a new project manager for our underground construction. He just started this week. He worked with a local contractor here, Copenhagen Construction. They're doing a lot of work in the county. He's going to be researching a lot of the duct system that Pac Bell has in the downtown area. They've got quite an extensive system with empty conduits, and we can lease space in those conduits. So he's already working on that project. He's got some records from Pac Bell, and he's going to be meeting with them over there, and he's starting to actually, even today he's been out here plotting all the manholes have the information on them, and then he just has to find out how many conduits in which direction they go. But yeah, it'd be beneficial to us too. So, but we're looking for that. Like with Williams or Quest or Level 3, any of those companies that are currently doing work, to try to partner with them on some of that trenching activity.
Oh, that would be great, because I thought that these different companies would be notifying both the city and the county because of the different permitting systems we've gone through. And that way everybody would be notified. So if they could take advantage of the openings while they're there, it'd be great.
Right. It makes sense. I think it's just a logistics and knowing what company's doing what out there. All right. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Item 6, public opportunity to discuss matters not on the agenda but within the commission's jurisdiction. I don't see anyone. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and members, just a quick addendum to the staff status report on 3 very brief items as we end. One, I spoke with the City Council-elect of Elk Grove about 3 weeks ago, and they're on board to the mission of the Cable Commission. By their number and the existing ordinance, they will tuck in their representation under the Folsom Galt representative or together with. Second, if you've seen in the trades, it appears that the FCC will be coming to a decision on the Media One merger into AT&T sometime mid-month this month. That should move forward then. The transfer process, again, in the next 60 days would be my best guess. And lastly, I copied you earlier this week of a notice of license violation with one of your licensees, and staff will be working through that process. Hopefully we'll resolve it before, but STI has failed to comply with the license in a couple of areas. With that, thank you.
Clarification, Mr. Chair, clarification on that Elk Grove, they're just going to tuck into what's existing now in the small cities. There won't be one more commissioner added to this body. Is that correct?
No, the ordinance that was adopted by the commission and all the entities when Citrus Heights came up set the threshold at 80,000, and the most recent number I've seen for Elk Grove is in the 55 to 60,000.
Before they could see the
That's
person.
the old census.
That's the most recent number we've seen from
Voter registration.
and or SACOG.
That's a pretty current estimate.
Oh, well, they'll be a lot bigger very fast.
Right. At the point in time, SACOG or some other entity advises that they reach the 80,000 threshold, then you add a new seat on the Cable Commission.
Fine, thank you.
Sure. There's no other items before the commission. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Second.
Got a unanimous moving here.
That's it.
That's why
each counselor, each city council person can pull any item off the consent calendar they want to do further
I'm
discussion.
just going on some good recommendation from some experienced leaders, and
So was I. So maybe the clerk can clarify this.
We could certainly reflect his no vote on the one item, if that's the pleasure of the council.
And how do you do that?
What?
We would reflect it in the minutes as either a separate item, or what we would do is note on the motion in the second, just on the one item that he voted no.
I find it, then I'll pull the item because I'd like to hear the reasons for voting no. I mean, maybe it'll change the way I want to vote.
So it's really up to the chair.
I mean, there's no advantage to having a consent calendar. We might as well take all items off of consent and discuss each one of them in its entirety. All votes are registered yes or no. That's why we have roll call.
What was presented was an opportunity to maybe make this easier, and it doesn't sound like that this occurred.
Blown that up.
We have a process. If we follow our process, we wouldn't get into these issues.
And that is fine. The thing that was raised was that somebody wanted to be able just to register a no vote on an issue and move forward. And if that presents an issue for the council, which it sounds like it does, I have no problem in going ahead and pull each of those items that were mentioned. And I think we have a motion and a second. We had an amendment at one point. Is the amendment still on the floor, or do you withdraw that, Mr. Daniels?
I'll withdraw it for now.
Thank you. The clerk, please read the roll.
Councilmember Daniels?
Aye.
Councilmember Hughes?
Aye.
Councilmember McGlashan?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shelby?
Aye.
Mayor Rainey?
Aye. Okay. Item number 8, will the clerk please read the subject and recommendation?
Item 8 is the call for bids regarding the construction of the Greenback Lane widening project from Dewey Drive to San Juan Avenue. The recommendation before council this evening is to approve the project plans and specifications and authorize the staff to advertise a request for bids. This would just be done by motion. There's no resolution.
I'll move approval of item 8.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
I'd be interested to know what the opposition is.
The opposition is very simple. It's just this. The project is to me just become obscene. We've gone from $4.2 million to $7.4 million. I no longer support the project as it is now ballooned to, and that's it, basically.
That does it. I think the voters have a right to know why a council member does not support a particular project. And with that, I'll second the motion.
Motion and second. Discussion on the motion?
Yes, I think it would be helpful to have some clarification of those two numbers that were just thrown out, because I think that one is the lower number is the construction costs, and then the higher number includes the design costs. Isn't that correct? It's not that the cost of the project has increased from the $4+ million to the $7+ million?
That's correct. The total cost of the project is $7.4 million, and the cost of only the construction portion is estimated at $4.2 million. So there hasn't been a $3 million increase as indicated by those two numbers you compared on the staff report.
Okay, well, I still find $3 million to design a 1 mile widening of a road pretty obscene, so I still feel the same way.
Okay, just to clarify, that includes right-of-way acquisition, not exclusively design, and it does also include the environmental document preparation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to also add, I'm building a new building in Sacramento, and if you're familiar with cost of, in these times where we've got a full economy, the average cost in Sacramento is running about 30% increase. I went from a $4.8 million building to a $900,000 increase. We had to cut those down, and it still cost $300,000 over the budgeted cost. So in these times when contractors are picking and choosing about where they work, you're going to have these inflationary costs, and I don't think the city can do anything to avoid those. And I think we're being good, responsible, civic-minded leaders, and I think we're also worried about the cost, but we're also Greenback Lane needs widening. And I think if we don't widen Greenback Lane, people are going to be in here talking about congestion and traffic, jams on Greenback, and I want to make sure the traffic is able to flow smoothly through our cities. We can get to work and get home. Our children are safe. We're going to improve sidewalks on the street. I think it's going to be an advantage to the city that we don't currently have.
And I'd like to weigh in on this particular project in that it has been the goal of this council, number one priority, to consider everything in terms of economic development of our community. And I think everybody in this community, particularly the businesses, and we will hear tonight from the Sunrise Marketplace, that getting people to and from that location is a critical element in the long-term financial stability of our community. And it's clear to me that one of our council members from the very beginning has been opposed to the widening of Greenback Lane, and I just wanted to make that known.
Any further discussion of the motion? I will throw my 2 cents in, and this is regarding the actual cost. It's not a general fund increase. It's paid for through T21 money, or T21? STIP money, I'm sorry. I get them all confused. But it was an increase that was granted through other agencies that handle those dollars, and therefore it is not additional drain. We would have gotten the lower amount had we requested it. We got the higher amount after we requested it. It does not necessarily affect the bottom line of the city of Citrus Heights. With that, would the clerk please read the roll?
Councilmember Daniels?
No.
Councilmember Hughes?
Aye.
Councilmember McGlashan?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shelby?
Aye.
Mayor Rainey?
Aye. Item 11, will the clerk please read the item?
Item number 11 is the contract for citywide landscape maintenance and watering services. The recommendation before council this evening is to adopt resolution number 2000-10, which would approve a one-year contract with California Landscape Associates and also authorize the General Services Director, upon satisfactory completion of the work, to execute 2 consecutive one-year extensions.
Are there any comments on the item? Right.
I asked the item to be pulled for a couple of reasons. Number one is first to definitely commend staff for working to lower the cost of this issue. It seems to be that we've lowered it quite significantly, actually, which is very nice through consolidating all of the districts together. Also, I know we're going to come back later to discuss this, but I think that it's important for us to examine whether or not we should be asking for a targeted group of residents to pay for these improvements year after year, or the city as a whole. I'll just take the first few that are mentioned on the contract for the subject we just